All right, stand by. 10 seconds.
Ready, camera,
Show.
one.
Talent.
Ready, camera,
Roll
two.
for record.
2,
1.
roll for record.
This campaign season is shaping up to be a riot. How'd you like those play on words? I know Stephen Kruiser liked it. I'm John Phillips, and this is The Rundown. Donald Trump is warning that there might be riots if the Republican Party snakes the nomination away from him at the convention in Cleveland. But that's not the first time the word riot has come up recently. Trump was roundly blamed by the media and other candidates, including Republicans, for a near riot in Chicago as anti-Trump protesters went nuts and forced the cancellation of his planned rally there. They say his rhetoric, flirting with the idea of paying supporters legal bills if they're arrested for scuffles with protesters, is causing all the trouble. North Carolina officials even briefly considered charging Trump with inciting a riot because of an incident where a protester was punched in the head by an elderly Trump rally attendee. Trump has somewhat changed his tone, calling his rallies love fest, and his campaign is encouraging fans to not touch or harm people trying to disrupt or even shut down his events. But violence is exactly what a lot of his opponents want. For example, in Dayton, Ohio, a Bernie Sanders supporter and white Black Lives Matter protester rushed the stage. He was wrestled to the ground and didn't manage to call Trump a racist at the time, but the network news fell all over themselves trying to give this lunatic ample airtime to trash Trump on TV. And you may recall a very similar thing happened to a Bernie Sanders rally when a Black Lives Matter protester rushed on stage, or multiple ones in fact, and seized the microphone. What did he do? Well, he surrendered, left the supporters who had come to hear him speak, and allowed the protesters to scream into the microphone for as long as they wanted. Should Trump just let the protesters shut down his rallies like Bernie? Or should Trump supporters fight back against those who want to shut them up and prevent them from assembling to support the candidate of their choice, knowing that any fights will be turned into campaign attacks against the Donald? Joining us to talk about all the controversy is author and political satirist Scott Ott at his home studio in Dallas, Texas, and stand-up comic and PJTV contributor Stephen Kruiser. You know, Kruiser, I think it's important that we define clearly just exactly what's going on at these rallies, and we define the people in terms that are true. I take umbrage to the fact that people refer to those who are starting violent or causing violence as protesters. There were police officers in Chicago that were bloodied, okay? If you attack a police officer, you're not a protester, you're a thug. People were rushing the stage, not just in Chicago, but at rallies in other states as well. If you rush the stage, and in a country where we've had political candidates for office assassinated, including in the 60s, a lot of them, then you're not a protester, you're a criminal. If you're punching people in the face and you're attacking people who are at a rally or destroying property, you're not a protester, you're a criminal. The people who are protesters are the people outside the venue with picket signs and voter registration forms. That is legitimate protest. But shutting down a rally so someone can't speak or attacking someone physically doesn't make you a protester, it makes you a criminal. Your thoughts?
Exactly. Welcome to 50 years of being on the wrong side of the media bias narrative here, because violent leftist protesters have just been called protesters. They leave the violent part out all the time. I mean, every time there's a G8, G12, G whatever summit, they're smashing windows, they've got masks on, they're lighting things on fire. But they get away, you know, in Occupy, they're raping people, but you know, they're protesters, they're just college kids. So the press has been abetting this for the longest time now. Now, the problem with this is I don't think the Trump people shouldn't defend themselves, but the whole thing gets flipped like it did the other night. It's like suddenly you're getting punched, and because you want to punch back, just like in the NBA, the guy throwing the second punch is the one who gets busted, okay? Every time, every single time. But the thing right now is, I think that the larger issue here is we've casually talked for months about Trump and even Bernie Sanders feeding on an angry electorate, and that's true. But you have to differentiate between anger and violence, too. And Trump right now, I think, should take some of his wealth, beef up security, and not let these people shut him down, but protect his people, too, so that they're not put in a position to defend themselves.
Now, Scott, you're a guy who reads a lot of books about history, so I've been wanting to ask you this question for a while now. Bernie Sanders at his rallies talks about a revolution. He talks about his campaign and his supporters in terms that are really strident. And revolution is a loaded word. I was trying to think back in all of human history to every revolution that's happened, and I can't think of one that was not that didn't include violence, and sometimes really dramatic violence. Can you think of an example of a revolution in human history that didn't involve violence?
No, and I understand Sanders wanting to inflame the passions of youth because youth have always been excited by revolutions in anything. And I don't think most of Sanders' supporters think in terms of a violent revolution, although there are a portion who do. What happened in Chicago was clearly engineered in part, and then it was sort of spontaneous in part. I mean, obviously, money went into the effort to get a bunch of people out there in the streets to feed the narrative that Donald Trump is a violent person, his supporters are violent. I don't think Donald Trump's supporters are generally violent. However, I do think that Donald Trump could do the Republican Party and his own campaign a great service if he stopped his own violent rhetoric, and frankly, if he had fired his campaign manager when he grabbed a reporter and then started slamming her on Twitter. I don't think this is an either-or situation. Donald Trump's not responsible for the bloodied police officers in downtown Chicago. Frankly, I think he should have held his rally anyway. But he also is responsible for his words, his actions, and the actions of Corey Lewandowski, his campaign manager.
Do we live in a world now where the mainstream left, I'm not talking about the fringes, I'm talking about the mainstream left, fundamentally has a disagreement with the First Amendment? And I say this not just in reference to what's gone on at the Donald Trump rallies. Ben Shapiro was trying to speak at Cal State LA, and protesters wanted to shut it down so that he couldn't speak. You look at what goes on with comedians, people you work with over the years who say, I don't even feel comfortable doing a set at a college campus because they're so easily offended and they want to shut you down and heckle you and make your life miserable. Do we now live in a world where that's just par for the course with the left?
Oh, it's not just that they're fundamentally opposed. They're bitterly opposed to the First Amendment. They have been for a long time. It's just starting to bubble up and be less veiled than it used to now. They have no intellectual counter-arguments for almost anything they believe anymore. So it has to be emotional. They have to shut you up before you can start talking, because once your truth gets out into the air, it might stick to some people, and they want to stop you before it even gets a chance to stick.
You know, Scott, on that point, it used to be in America that if you didn't like what someone was saying, you combated speech that you don't believe in with more free speech. And that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. I think it's much better to combat free speech you don't like with more free speech. Your thoughts on that?
Well, absolutely. And as our mutual friend Bill Whittle likes to say, that, you know, conservatives want the liberals to keep talking. Liberals want conservatives to shut up. And I think Kruiser's right. It's because there really is no rationality behind so much of what the left believes. It is just, things would be better if I were in charge and I were telling people what to do. The only way that's going to happen is if the people who disagree with me shut up. So sit down and shut up, he explained. And I think that is what the left was trying to do to Donald Trump. Now, unfortunately, two things happen here. One, Donald Trump played into the leftist narrative by canceling his rally. But ultimately, the leftists lost that because Donald Trump was actually strengthened by that whole thing, because the left looked really bad in that situation. And, you know, trotting out Bill Ayers, who is thinking here to bring him out to the streets and, you know, make him part of that thing? So, you know, I think the left, I'm hoping that people are catching on to this idea that they're not about winning the argument, that they're about shutting down the argument.
I think Donald Trump comes out of Chicago the big winner, because when you see the video that Scott was describing, and you saw the Mexican flags outside, you saw the American flag getting jostled around as protesters or violent protesters were inside attacking Trump supporters. When you look at that, you see Trump as the agent that's pushing back against that, because he's the figure that these people are all attacking and trying to shut down and trying to silence. And I think that there is a silent majority in America that looks at what the left is doing to Ben Shapiro and stand-up comics and Donald Trump and Chris Rock at the Oscars, who they then apologized for one of the jokes that he did that they thought was insensitive towards Asians. And people say, you know what, I don't want to live in that America. I want to live in an America where people can say whatever the hell they want, even if it is politically incorrect. And Donald Trump is seen as the chief man who is giving pushback to those people.
I agree that I think he came out of that stronger, but for the long-term game, for the long game here, what we have to do on the right is take this opportunity to take the people to task who are culpable in fomenting this kind of thing. The press, as you pointed out in the beginning, is it the people who have been giving cover to these protesters for so many years? We have to keep hammering on that. We have to not let the public perception be swayed by these idiots who still have access to so much media. And the other thing is on our side, this is what I would like to see happen. I know that the left says a lot of super offensive things all the time. I don't want people on our side to be demanding apologies anymore,
No,
because I think the apology demands are hacky. I think they're bad. I think they're, if you're offended, then stand up and say, I'm offended. You had the right to offend me, and move on like a grown-up American who believes in the First Amendment.
I couldn't agree with you more. That's a great point. All right, that's all the time we have for today. What do you think? Should Trump tone down the rhetoric, or is giving in to protesters and even violent criminals that want to shut down your political speech a huge mistake? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. I'm John Phillips. Thanks for watching The Rundown.